Alex, it's so nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's good to be chatting with you.
Yeah. So, exactly how terrified of the future are you?
I'm not really terrified of it. I've been making docs around technology for a long time, probably a dozen years now, and I've been around the internet in a pretty meaningful way since the early '80s. So, I'm probably a tech agnostic. I view these things as tools. I don't think we're in danger of an algorithm killing everybody. I think the issues that go on online tend to be human and societal issues and not technological issues. So, I'm not terrified because generally human beings are pretty good about solving problems, and I think we'll solve these problems. I just think they're big problems.
Yeah, they're definitely big problems. Now, I was curious, was there any involvement from current day YouTube or any pushback from them at all about this project?
No, I would say the opposite. I think they were very collaborative, or they were very open to me talking to them. I would say more than collaborative because I wasn't really asking for their collaboration, but um, it was. I found them to be extremely open, and from Steve Chen to Susan Wojcicki on camera to people behind the scenes at Google who I spoke to, who were all great. I was very open about what I was doing, which I believe is not, a hit job on them at all, but really just a thorough examination of the entire history of that company, its relationship to Google and its relationship to the world, but that we are dealing with some significant issues right now, and I intended to look at those. So, no, I haven't. I didn't get pushback. I mean, I don't. I don't know everyone there. I don't, know if everyone there is going to love what I did, but look, you got to tell stories truthfully. So that's what I set out to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing that there was a quote in the movie that I really resonated with, and it was, if we don't figure this out, we're going to lose what it means to be human. And I really like that. And it kind of goes to your point earlier about being tech agnostic. But as someone who spent so much time researching, YouTube and this different tech, what's your educated guess as to a possible solution to the problems that you address with YouTube in the documentary?
Well, look, I don't think the problems are easily solved. I think that's kind of what makes me want to make a doc is when we're up against something that doesn't have like a quick, easy answer. Because then, hell, just write a magazine article, be like, just do this, and
Yeah.
everything will be great. So I think that we're dealing with very big companies that, from a profit standpoint, don't really want to police themselves that much because it will absolutely drive their profits down. They're monetizing all content, and a lot of the most hateful and sort of disinformation oriented content is driving a lot of eyeballs, right? So there's a lot of money there. So I think there's an incentive for them not to change themselves, and I think that they have the lobbying power and muscle and money to keep the government from forcing them to change them. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Actually, I think that's probably not going to change for a decade or more.
Yeah.
But I do think it will change, and I think that
I think it has to change. I mean,
there's no doubt we're in an industrial revolution like we were, during the last industrial revolution. And the way that we handled that one was by breaking up U.S. Steel and big tobacco, and I think, and the railway. And I think that we'll be doing the same thing here. I think these companies are just too damn big, and I think that they need to be smaller, and there needs to be antitrust and anti-monopoly legislation at play. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. And unfortunately, what I see happening instead on the government side is a lot of regulation, which actually makes the internet worse and makes it less safe for the average person. And I think we're going to be seeing more. I think we're heading into a choppier water, but
mhm.
we'll come out of it in a better place. But I think the way we're dealing with the internet and AI right now, from a government standpoint, is very misguided, and is going to make a lot of this stuff worse before it gets better.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. I think we have very similar ideas about where we're heading and how long it's going to take to solve some of those issues. Now, as someone who's carved out this niche for directing documentaries that more or less focus on technology, you mentioned AI. What is that an aspect of technology that you're interested in right now that you might look deeper into for like your next documentary?
It's really early, so I'm a little curious to see where it's going to go. And when I say it's really, AI has become, and it's understandable, become kind of a catch-all word for all of this stuff that's going on on the machine learning side and other aspects of how we're getting these technologies to work. But I think that there is going to be a very big shift that comes from the acceleration of these technologies. It will not net out the way we perceive it. I think right now everyone is freaking out about like DALL-E and Midjourney and like all of these ChatGPT. And sure, there's reasons to be concerned about some of those technologies. There's reasons to be excited about them too. But there's always nuance underneath this stuff, and the end result is never what you think it's going to be. And like I made a documentary about blockchain and Bitcoin in 2017 when everyone thought it was over, and that's before the NFT thing happened.
Yeah.
That they thought, oh, this is over. It was by then. It was like it was a fad. It was like it hadn't even begun to go where it was going. And it's still going places. People seem to have abandoned it, which I think is good because most of what they were interested in was the kind of nonsensical side of it. But there's a lot of stuff going on there still. So these things kind of happen in their own time, and where they go is always different than where people think they're going to go. So I think AI is very important to keep an eye on, especially, we're striking right now. I'm in the WGA and the DGA and SAG, and there are real concerns there that are legitimate. But even what's going on there is going to look very different in 2 to 5 years, like very, very different.
Yeah. Now, do you remember the first video that you ever saw on YouTube?
No way.
I know. I might as well have asked you what's the first Saturday morning cartoon you ever watched. It's an impossible question. I apologize.
Yeah, I was on Napster all the time, right, in 1999. And we started pulling video down off the net around that time. Like you started to be able to pull MPEGs down around that time. And I was, directing commercials and a lot of effects-driven commercials, and we were moving video around online for those. And there was all kinds of robust ways of doing that back then that weren't like publicly being used. So, I started playing with video online probably in the mid 90s. By the time what YouTube did that was so watershed was they suddenly, as probably remember, they made it easy, right? That's like any technological advancement is like who makes this thing easier. Mm-hmm. So they just made it much easier to upload and watch and share video. So God knows what the first thing I put on there or downloaded was, but it is an extremely important platform, and it has done and continues to do a lot of good. And I do think long term, the boat will sort of settle with the sort of new technologies and these new platforms, so that they're not driving so much negative and monetizing so much negative content.
Knowing me in the mid 2000s, it was probably somebody getting kicked in the balls. That's probably what I watched.
Entirely possible that it was the same for me, but it's probably better if I don't go there.
Now, I do have to get to the most important question, which is, has Keanu watched the YouTube Effect yet?
Yeah, of course. He always watches. We're always watching each other's stuff as we make it. So.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, yeah. I know one thing I really want to bring up. I feel like a lot of your work has been critical of corporations, even as far back as Freaked, which I gotta say, I think Freaked is incredibly underrated. The Sockhead's death traumatized me as a kid. The blood coming out of his hand just messed me up. Now, have you ever thought about revisiting Freaked at all?
There's no way to do it. We would love to, but there's. I
don't know that there's no way, especially like if you marry the technology, like because there's a lot of like there's people with disabilities who become TikTok famous and so on and so forth. So I think there's. I know that he's sort of healed by the end, but I do think that there's like a really interesting twist to those characters in like the modern day setting.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. I don't know if anyone would pay for it, but we're still just trying to get the damn thing on Blu-ray. Well,
I'm right here to help. If you need help, okay. I'll do what I can, man.
Awesome, I appreciate it.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask was the makeup in that movie was incredible. Who on the cast had the most uncomfortable makeup?
I did by far because I had like two servo motors, one on my head, one on my hump. Like one controlling my mouth and another one controlling like all kinds of other stuff, but my ear and like the pus that would pump out of my head. But the main thing was like Bill Corso's and Steve Johnson's innovation was how to make it look like my mouth was continuous, even though the right side was this giant jaw.
Hmm.
Um, and in order to do that, they created like a fish hook type rig that just pulled my mouth all the way back. And like on day one, it just ripped a giant hole in my face,
Oh,
and
God.
that was just incredibly painful. So I couldn't talk. I just drooled like blood and pus, and the other actors had to kind of like act off of me while I did that. So I'd say mine was, but Keanu's was definitely second. And once I got used to mine, it wasn't painful anymore. Whereas he was getting, we were we were shooting like in 100-degree weather, and he was getting like Tony Gardner was like individually gluing hair onto his face. And I mean, I don't know, man. I'm pretty good. I'm really good with makeup. I just did another movie recently under full prosthetics with Bill Corso again. Um, but that is my idea of hell. Like, I can't believe he put up with that. Like, I would get to set somewhere and he would just be sitting in his trailer. It would already be 100 degrees and he was just like covered in hair, like real hair. And I was like, ugh, what a nightmare. So glad I don't have to do that.
I just rewatched it a couple of days ago when I knew I was talking to you. I was like, I haven't seen Freaked in forever. I got to watch it. And so I watched it, and my fiance is a makeup artist. And so she's practiced on me before and pulled and I was like, there's no way he wasn't drooling the whole time.
The whole time. Yeah, just buckets of drool. I mean, I remember when the first time they put it on, like when I had to act, and so I was directing with Tom, and I had to do a shot with Megan. It was like over my shoulder with Megan Ward and Michael Stoyanov, and she's acting with me, and I open my mouth to say something, and I can't. I sound like Quasimodo. I was like, "Arr!" And then just like a bucket of drool, just like real drool, just like emptied out of my mouth, and she just looked horrified. It was great, actually.
That's awesome. I hope you one day get to make a sequel to that, because it's such an underappreciated movie. I love that movie.
Oh,
now, I did read that you're directing the adults coming up with Evan Rachel Wood and Josh Gad, and I love Evan. I love both of them. They're both great.
Yeah.
I've interviewed both of them, but Evan and I share a mutual best friend, so she's fantastic. And,
yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, they're both great.
Just so talented. Has that started filming yet?
No, we got kind of slowed down by the strike, so I'm going to start later this year. Okay. Yeah, so we're in pre-pro. We're just dealing with locations and casting and all that jazz. Yeah,
I'm a sucker for a solid murder mystery, so I'm excited.
Yeah, it's good.
What you're going to do with it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I will say, to this day, I believe that The Lost Boys is it's probably, if not the best, one of the best horror comedies of all time. It's just fantastic. Considering how good you've got with directing, would you consider directing a remake if you were approached to do so?
Gosh, I don't know if I would. I mean, it's like stepping into hallowed ground for me, just in terms of how great a job Joel did and how specific his vision was. And my brain doesn't work like Joel, so I don't know if I could do it justice. I think you'd want to find someone who thinks that way. I didn't want to direct Bill and Ted 3. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to come in and screw up. We were so lucky we got Dean Pariseau, but like I didn't want to come in and screw this thing up. But I'm really proud of that movie, and I'm really, really grateful that I got to be in it. It's like some miraculously, after all these years, people still love that film, which is crazy. It's like what, 88, 89.
Oh my! And, I watch that movie yearly. I mean, and just for the record, I'm not here. I'm not. I would rather get a Freaked sequel than I would a Lost Boys remake. I don't want a remake. I want you to know that I'm not interested in a remake. I'll rewatch that movie till I'm dead. But I just was curious if you would be interested, because it's sort of an Hollywood inevitability, right? That
it is. Yeah, I think they've done it. I think
everything.
Someone just rebooted it. I think that's done already. It's coming out next year.
Somebody's rebooting the Lost Boys.
Yeah, someone did do it. I think it got made. There was an announcement about it.
Oh, I didn't even hear that. I don't know how that, because I would have been furious.
You can Google it. Yeah. Yeah. It was in Deadline or Variety or something. I saw it about a year ago. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good to know. Well, it's a tall order ahead for those guys.
I know.
Last question before I get out of here, and thank you again for the time.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Awesome. I'm sure you get asked about Bill and Ted all the time. All I want to know is do you still say bogus in real life?
I do, because I think it's actually a really good word. I think the guys created some, characters that, even though we're dimwits, we speak fairly eloquently. So bogus is a good word. So it gets used. It gets used around the house by me and my kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, good. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah,
Alex, thank you so much for this. I've been a
sure
huge
thing, man.
fan since I was a little kid, and this is amazing for me. And the YouTube effect was fantastic. I watched it with
Oh,
my
thank you.
fiance. We both loved it.
Great.
And I mean, you've just gotten so good at directing. I'm on board to watch anything that you make.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Thanks so much. I love what you guys do. So it's great to be able to talk to you.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. Have a
Yeah.
great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.